You're going to want to sit down for this one. We just got our hands on the actual affidavit from the FBI agent responsible for telling a federal magistrate judge that he had probable cause in order to do a search warrant raid of Fulton County, Georgia's 2020 election and voting material. And now we know what he based it on. He effectively took, and it was spoon-fed to him, a conspiracy theories, the big lie, the stolen election deniers who all got together, including those that worked for the pillow guy, Mike Lindell, all debunked by federal courts and state courts, took all of that, led by a lawyer named Kurt Olson, who's currently Donald Trump's director of election security and integrity, a debunked fringe conspiracy theorist, right, who got sanctioned by the Arizona Supreme Court for bringing false claims into their court system about election fraud. Right, that Kurt Olson and others. This is what all the FBI guy did. He put it together. He put a ribbon around it. He ran into a magistrate judge and said probable cause. I'm Michael Popak. I've got a copy of the affidavit. I'm going to decode all the people that are mentioned in there, some of them redacted, and tell you why this is a travesty that the federal judge in Atlanta, Judge Booley, should put a stop to immediately. Now, back in October of last year, Donald Trump appointed this guy, Kurt Olson. Kurt Olson is so fringe, so out there, that even election deniers think he's fringe. He came up with all sorts of wacky propositions about seizing the voting machines. Every time you hear Donald Trump talk about seizing voting machines, it probably came out of the fevered imagination of Kurt Olson. If you want to see what I'm talking about, when he was representing Kari Lake, here's a clip of Kurt Olson talking about election fraud. What you should know is after this clip, he was sanctioned by the Arizona Supreme Court for committing fraud on the court. Let's play the clip.
Welcome, Kurt. Finally, somewhat of a win for Kari Lake.
You know, Emerald, great to be with you. I think that this is actually the second win in many ways. If you recall, every one of these election challenges had been dismissed on grounds of standing. And so this was the first case to go to trial, albeit it was narrowed on the issues of the tabulator malfunctions and the chain of custody. And even though the trial court did not grant us a victory on those issues, for the first time, people got to see the evidence and judge it for themselves. And so I look at this as the second victory because we are making progress. And the Supreme Court did remand this case back on the issue of signature verification, which is a very, very significant issue. You may recall that there was presentations given at Wendy Rogers, the Arizona Senate committee hearing on elections. And there are literally over 100,000 ballots in question because of invalid signatures that were accepted and tabulated. This is not a challenge about simply a few bad signatures somewhere. This is about a systemic failure of the entire signature verification process, which is allowing tens of thousands of ballots with signatures that don't match the record on file. And this is the only security feature for mail-in voting. So the question really becomes, who is mailing in all these votes with signatures that don't match the voter signature on file?
Now, this guy got himself a top position within the Trump administration, and he made a referral to the FBI. And then, based on his back-of-the-envelope data that's all been rebuked, including by the first Trump administration, those people took a look at his analysis in the first Trump administration and thought it was crazy cuckoo, and that it was poorly drafted and poorly researched and didn't have any supporting evidence, and they rejected it. This is all in the Jan 6 committee analysis of the emails involving Kurt Olson. And yet this guy's got the credibility to the FBI agent controlled by Donald Trump to go launch a criminal investigation. But that's not all. Now let's talk about Dr. Janice King. Dr. Jan. Yes, at the time, the only Republican member of the Georgia State Election Board. She got it in her mind, based on election conspiracy theorists, that there were 17,000 missing ballots between the electronic ballots and the paper ballots in Georgia. That was completely debunked by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and every legitimate independent entity has ever looked at this. And yet she ran around 17,000, 17,000, 17,000. And lo and behold, guess who's cooperating with the FBI to prepare this affidavit in order to get the search warrant? Right. Dr. Janice King says, it says in paragraph 17 that witness number 2 is the Republican appointed member of the Georgia State Election Board, an obstetrician prior to serving on the state election board. And then based on her, she requested that she see all of the images. And they stuck her in a room and let her look at all of the images. And there she found that they were short 17,774. Look, the Secretary of State of Georgia came out and said there's no missing ballots. There's no missing 17,000. And we have the proof. And yet it shows up again 6 years later in this FBI agent who should be ashamed of himself in his affidavit. Why is that? But not the only one. Because then it turns to somebody that we know is Janelle King. Janelle King, also on the board, she is a complete election denier where she doesn't believe that Biden won and refuses to recognize that Joe Biden won the election. And she's in the affidavit. But it gets better.